The blood on Miranda Vale's hands had long dried by the time she stumbled into Moab, Utah. Her dress torn and her face streaked with dust and tears that had stopped flowing hours ago. She had walked through the night after the wagon accident that claimed her parents, leaving her utterly alone in the September of 1882. With nothing but the clothes on her back and a desperate need to get as far from that overturned wagon as her legs would carry her. The main street stretched before her in the harsh morning light, storefronts and saloons standing like sentinels on either side. Men tipped their hats as they passed, their eyes curious but not unkind, and women clutched their shopping baskets a little tighter, no doubt wondering what tragedy had befallen this young woman who looked like she had crawled through hell itself. Miranda's throat burned with thirst, and her legs trembled beneath her skirts. She needed water, needed rest, needed someone to tell her what to do next because at 21 years old, she had never been truly alone before. Her parents had been traveling from Missouri to set up a general store in Salt Lake City, a dream that had died along with them when the wheel broke and the wagon tumbled down that rocky slope. She found herself at the edge of town, near what appeared to be a livery stable, and it was there that she saw the most beautiful creature she had ever laid eyes on. A palomino horse stood in the corral, his golden coat gleaming in the sunlight, his white mane flowing like silk in the gentle breeze. The horse turned to look at her, and for the first time since the accident, Miranda felt something other than grief. Her feet carried her to the fence without conscious thought, and she reached out a trembling hand. "Hello there, beautiful," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse and dust. "You are the most magnificent thing I have ever seen." The horse approached the fence, nostrils flaring as he investigated this stranger. Miranda kept her hand steady, letting him come to her on his own terms. When his soft nose touched her palm, she felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were different from the ones she had shed throughout the night. "I bet you have never known a day of worry, have you?" she continued, her voice gaining strength as she stroked the horse's velvety nose. "You are well cared for, I can tell. Someone loves you very much. Your coat is brushed and your eyes are clear. I wish I could say the same for myself right now." The horse whinnied softly as if in response, and Miranda found herself smiling despite everything. "My name is Miranda," she told him. "I know we have only just met, but I feel like you understand me better than anyone else could right now. Is that silly? Probably. But you have kind eyes and I could use some kindness today. Talk to me like that too." The voice came from behind her, masculine and warm with a hint of amusement, and Miranda spun around so quickly she nearly lost her balance. The man standing there was tall, with dark hair that curled slightly at the collar and eyes the color of whiskey in sunlight. He wore dusty clothes that marked him as a working man, and his hat was pushed back on his head, revealing a face that was handsome despite the stubble darkening his jaw. Miranda felt heat flood her cheeks, mortified at being caught talking to a horse like a confidant. "I apologize," she stammered. "I did not mean to bother your horse." The man's expression softened as he took in her disheveled appearance, the tear tracks through the dust on her face, the way her hands trembled slightly as she clasped them together. "No bother at all," he said gently. "Captain there does not get nearly enough conversation throughout the day. I am sure he appreciated it." "Captain," Miranda repeated, looking back at the horse who had returned to the fence, seeming to demand more attention. "Captain Morgan," the man confirmed, stepping closer but keeping a respectful distance. "Named him after my father's favorite drink, though I promise the horse has better sense than my father ever did." He paused, studying her more carefully now. "I am Finn Porter. I own this stable, and I could not help but notice you look like you have had a rough go of it." Miranda wanted to maintain her composure, to act like the proper young lady her mother had raised her to be, but the kindness in his eyes undid her. "There was an accident," she heard herself say. "My parents, they did not make it. I walked here from about 15 miles east, I think. I am not entirely sure." Finn's expression shifted immediately to one of concern. 15 miles in that. He gestured to her torn dress and the thin shoes on her feet, which she only now realized were bleeding. "Come on. You need water and those feet need tending. And probably a good meal too, if I am not mistaken." "I have no money," Miranda admitted, hating how her voice cracked on the words. "I cannot pay you." "Did I ask for payment?" Finn countered, already moving toward a door at the side of the stable. "Come on now before you fall over. Captain will still be here after we get you sorted out." Something about his no-nonsense tone made it impossible to argue. Miranda followed him into the stable, which was clean and well organized, with several horses in stalls that all looked as well cared for as Captain. The smell of hay and leather and horses was oddly comforting, earthy and real in a way that grounded her. Finn led her to a small room at the back that appeared to serve as both office and living quarters. There was a simple cot in one corner, a desk covered with papers and ledgers, and a small stove with a kettle. He gestured for her to sit in the only chair while he poured water from a pitcher into a basin. "Let me see those feet," he said, kneeling in front of her. Miranda hesitated, propriety warring with practicality, but the look on his face was purely professional, the concern of someone who simply wanted to help. She lifted her skirt just enough to reveal her shoes, and when he carefully removed them, she could not suppress a small gasp of pain. "These need cleaning and bandaging," Finn said, his voice tight with what might have been anger, though she sensed it was not directed at her. "Those shoes were not made for that kind of walking. Hell, no shoes would be good for that." He worked with gentle efficiency, cleaning the cuts and blisters with water and wrapping her feet in clean strips of cloth he produced from a drawer. Miranda watched his bent head, noting the way his hair fell across his forehead, the concentration in his expression, the careful way he handled her injuries. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked quietly. "You do not know me at all." Finn looked up at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her heart skip. "My mother always said that how we treat strangers in their time of need shows who we really are. Besides, anyone who talks to horses like they are people cannot be all bad." Despite everything, Miranda found herself smiling. "I have always liked animals better than most people," she admitted. "They do not judge, they do not lie, and they are always exactly what they appear to be." "Cannot argue with that logic," Finn said, tying off the last bandage. "There now, that should help. You need to stay off these feet for at least a day or two, let them start healing." "But I cannot impose on you like that," Miranda protested. "I need to find work, find a place to stay. I need to send word to Salt Lake City about my parents, arrange for someone to retrieve their bodies." Her voice broke on the last word, and suddenly she was crying again, the grief she had been holding at bay flooding through her in great, gasping sobs. She felt more than saw Finn move, and then his hand was on her shoulder, steady and warm and solid. "One thing at a time," he said quietly. "First, you rest. Then we will figure out the rest together. I know the sheriff, he can help with arrangements for your parents. And as for work and a place to stay, well, I could actually use some help around here. My last stable hand took off for the silver mines 2 weeks ago, and I have been managing alone ever since. The pay is not much, but it comes with a room and meals." Miranda looked up at him through her tears, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You would hire me? Just like that? You said you like animals," Finn pointed out. And clearly they like you if the way Captain was responding is any indication. That is half the battle right there. The rest I can teach you." He paused, then added more softly, "Besides, you need help and I can provide it. Seems simple enough to me." It did seem simple, impossibly simple, but Miranda had learned in the past day that sometimes life could turn on a single moment, for better or worse. "I accept," she said, wiping at her tears with the back of her hand. "And thank you, Mr. Porter. I do not know how I will ever repay you for this kindness." "It is just Finn," he corrected gently. "And you will repay me by learning to be the best stable hand in Moab. Deal?" "Deal," Miranda agreed, and when she shook his offered hand, she felt the calluses earned from hard work, the strength tempered with gentleness. For the first time since the accident, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she was going to be all right. Finn helped her to the cot, insisting she rest while he went to speak with the sheriff about her parents. He brought her water and some bread and cheese, which she ate slowly, her stomach uncertain after so long without food. Through the small window, she could see Captain in the corral, his golden coat bright against the blue Utah sky. She must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, the light had shifted and Finn was back, settling into the chair with a quiet sigh. Miranda sat up carefully, mindful of her bandaged feet. "The sheriff is sending some men out to bring your parents back," Finn said without preamble. "There is a church in town. Reverend Matthews is a good man. He will help with the burial arrangements. I told him you would come by when you were feeling up to it, probably tomorrow or the day after." Miranda nodded, swallowing past the lump in her throat. "Thank you," she managed. "I know that could not have been a pleasant task." "It needed doing," Finn said simply. "I also stopped by the boarding house and got your room sorted. Mrs. Henderson runs it. She is strict but fair. 3 meals a day and clean sheets once a week. It is just down the street, so you can walk there easy enough once your feet heal up." "A room," Miranda repeated, confused. "But I thought you said the job came with a room." Finn shifted in his chair, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Well, yes, technically this room here, but that would not be proper, would it? You staying in the same building as me, people would talk. This way you have your own space, your privacy. I will walk you there at night and fetch you in the morning until your feet are better. Then you can come and go as you please." It was such a thoughtful gesture, so considerate of her reputation, that Miranda felt warmth spread through her chest. In her experience, men rarely concerned themselves with such things unless they had to. "That is very kind of you," she said softly, "but I insist on paying for the room from my wages. I will not take charity beyond what you have already given." "Stubborn, are you?" Finn asked, but there was amusement in his voice rather than irritation. "Independent," Miranda corrected. "My mother raised me to pull my own weight." "Fair enough," Finn conceded. "We can work out the details later. For now, why do not you come meet the rest of the horses? If you are going to work here, you should know who is who." He helped her up, supporting her weight as she hobbled on her bandaged feet. They made their way through the stables slowly, Finn introducing her to each horse with the kind of fondness usually reserved for family members. There was Thunder, a massive black gelding who belonged to the banker; Daisy, a sweet-tempered mare owned by the doctor; Copper, a reddish-brown stallion being boarded for a rancher who was away on business, and several others, each with their own personality and quirks. "And Captain, of course, is mine," Finn said as they made their way back to the corral where the palomino waited. "Had him since he was a colt, going on 6 years now. Best horse I have ever owned, and I have owned quite a few." Miranda reached out to stroke Captain's neck, marveling at the softness of his coat. "He is special," she agreed. "I could tell the moment I saw him." "He seems to think the same of you," Finn observed. Usually he is more standoffish with strangers, but he took to you right away." Captain nuzzled at Miranda's hand and she laughed, the sound surprising her with its lightness. "I think he is just hoping for treats," she said. "Probably," Finn admitted, pulling an apple from his pocket and cutting it in half with a knife. He handed one piece to Miranda. "Here, give him this." Apples are his favorite. Miranda offered the apple to Captain, who took it delicately from her palm, his lips tickling her skin. She found herself talking to him again, telling him what a good boy he was, how handsome and clever he seemed. When she looked up, Finn was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing," he said, shaking his head slightly. "Just thinking that Captain is one lucky horse getting talked to so sweetly. Man could get jealous." Miranda felt her cheeks heat again, but this time it was not from embarrassment. There was something in the way Finn looked at her, something that made her pulse quicken and her breath catch. She barely knew this man, and yet already she felt more comfortable with him than she had with the boys back in Missouri who had come calling, with their practiced compliments and wandering hands. The days that followed fell into a gentle rhythm. Each morning, Finn would collect Miranda from the boarding house, and she would spend the day at the stable, learning the ins and outs of caring for horses. He taught her how to properly brush them down, how to check their hooves for stones, how to measure out feed and fresh water. Her hands, soft from a life of relative ease, quickly developed blisters that turned to calluses. Her muscles ached from the unfamiliar work, but she relished it, found purpose in it, and through it all she talked to the horses. She greeted each one by name, asked them about their day, told them stories about her childhood in Missouri. Finn would often pause in his work to listen, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You really do have a way with them," he said one afternoon, watching as Miranda coaxed a nervous mare into letting her examine a cut on her leg. "I have been trying to get close enough to check that wound for 2 days, and you managed it in 10 minutes. "She just needed to know I was not going to hurt her," Miranda said, gently cleaning the cut. "Animals can sense intentions, I think. They know when someone cares." Finn moved closer, observing her technique. "You are a natural at this," he said, and the admiration in his voice made her heart flutter. "I am glad you stumbled into my corral that day." Miranda looked up at him, finding him closer than she had realized. She could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the way the afternoon sun caught in his dark hair. "I am glad too," she said softly. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither seemed ready to name. Then the mare shifted, breaking the spell, and they both returned to tending the wound with perhaps a bit more focus than necessary. That evening, after the burial service for her parents, Miranda sat in her room at the boarding house and finally let herself grieve properly. The service had been simple but respectful, attended by Finn and a few townspeople who came out of basic human decency. Reverend Matthews had said kind words about souls gone too soon and the comfort of heaven, and Miranda had stood there feeling numb and untethered. She had expected Finn to leave after walking her back to the boarding house, but instead, he had asked Mrs. Henderson for permission to sit with Miranda in the parlor for a while. The older woman had agreed, though she left the door pointedly ajar and made several trips past the room, ensuring propriety was maintained. "Tell me about them," Finn said quietly, sitting in the chair across from Miranda. "Your parents, what were they like?" And so Miranda talked. She told him about her father's terrible jokes, about her mother's singing voice, about the way they would dance in the kitchen when they thought she was not watching. She told him about the dream of the general store, about leaving Missouri for a new start, about all the plans that would never come to fruition now. Finn listened without interruption, his steady presence a comfort. When she finally ran out of words, he reached across the space between them and took her hand. "They sound like they were good people," he said. "And they raised a good daughter. I think they would be proud of how you are handling all this." "I do not feel like I am handling it well," Miranda admitted. "I feel like I am barely holding myself together most days." "That is handling it," Finn assured her. "You keep going, you put one foot in front of the other, you do what needs to be done. That takes strength, Miranda. More strength than most people realize." Over the following weeks, Miranda discovered a truth she had not expected. She was good at this work, and more than that, she loved it. There was something deeply satisfying about the physical labor, the tangible results of her efforts. The horses thrived under her care, and she found herself looking forward to each day at the stable with an enthusiasm that surprised her. She also found herself looking forward to seeing Finn, to their conversations while they worked, to the way he would laugh at something she said or show her a new technique with infinite patience. He never made her feel inadequate or silly, never treated her as anything less than a capable partner in running the stable. One particularly warm October afternoon, she was brushing Captain in the corral when Finn emerged from the stable carrying his saddle. "Fancy a ride?" he asked. "Those feet of yours are healed up now, and I think it is about time you learned to ride properly." Miranda's eyes widened. "I have ridden before," she protested. "Side saddle with my mother when we would visit neighbors." Finn made a dismissive sound. "That is not real riding. I mean really ride, the way you need to out here. This is not Missouri, Miranda. Out here, knowing how to ride properly might save your life someday." He had a point, she had to admit, and the idea of riding Captain, of being on the back of this magnificent animal, was undeniably appealing. Finn saddled Captain with practiced ease, explaining each step as he went. "Always check the cinch twice," he instructed. "A loose saddle can dump you faster than a green bronc." He helped her mount, his hands steady at her waist, and Miranda found herself astride a horse for the first time in her life. It felt strange and slightly scandalous, her skirts hiked up to accommodate the position, but also thrilling. "How does it feel?" Finn asked, looking up at her. "Terrifying," Miranda admitted with a laugh, "and wonderful." Finn swung up behind her, his chest warm against her back, his arms coming around her to hold the reins. "I have got you," he murmured near her ear. "Just relax and move with him." They started with a walk, Finn guiding Captain in slow circles around the corral while Miranda got used to the motion. His instructions were clear and patient, his presence behind her both reassuring and distracting in ways she was not quite ready to examine. After a while, he urged Captain into a trot, and Miranda gasped as the gait changed, bouncing her uncomfortably until Finn coached her into finding the rhythm. "There you go," he encouraged. "You are getting it." They rode until the sun began to set, painting the red rocks surrounding Moab in shades of orange and gold. By the time Finn helped her down, Miranda's legs were shaky and she knew she would be sore tomorrow, but she was grinning. "That was incredible," she said, flushed with exhilaration. "Can we do it again tomorrow?" Finn smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face into something boyish and open. "Every day if you want," he promised. "Though tomorrow you ride on your own. I will be right beside you, but you need to learn to handle the reins yourself." As October gave way to November, Miranda's riding improved steadily. Finn had her up on Daisy now, the gentle mare more forgiving of mistakes than Captain would be. They would ride out into the surrounding desert, and Finn would point out landmarks, tell her about the area's history, teach her which plants were safe and which to avoid. On these rides, they talked about everything and nothing. Finn told her about growing up in Wyoming, about his father who had been a cavalry officer before whiskey took him, about his mother who had died when he was 16, leaving him to fend for himself. He told her about drifting for years, working ranches and stables, until he had saved enough to put down roots here in Moab 3 years ago. Miranda shared her own stories, about her childhood dreams of adventure that had always been tempered by her parents' practical nature, about the books she loved to read, about her secret fear that she would never amount to anything more than a shopkeeper's wife. "You are already more than that," Finn said when she confessed this fear one day. They had stopped to water the horses at a small creek, and they sat on the bank, boots off and feet cooling in the stream. "You are one of the best stable hands I have ever worked with, and believe me, I have worked with plenty." "You are just being kind," Miranda said, though his words warmed her. "I am being honest," Finn corrected. "I do not say things I do not mean, Miranda. That is not my way." She turned to look at him, really look at him, and found him already watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. The space between them seemed to shrink, and she thought maybe he was going to kiss her, hoped that he would, but then Daisy whinnied and the moment passed. They rode back to town in companionable silence, but something had shifted between them, some unspoken acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since that first day in the corral. That night, lying in her narrow bed at the boarding house, Miranda allowed herself to think about Finn in ways she had been avoiding. She thought about his gentle hands, his patient teaching, the way he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention. She thought about how safe she felt with him, how seen and valued. She was falling in love with him, she realized with a start. Somewhere between learning to saddle a horse and mastering a trot, between early morning conversations over coffee and late afternoon rides through the desert, she had fallen completely and utterly in love with Finn Porter. The question was, did he feel the same way? The answer came 2 weeks later, on a cold November morning when frost covered the ground and their breath misted in the air. Miranda arrived at the stable to find Finn already there, which was unusual since she had taken to coming earlier and earlier, enjoying the quiet time with the horses before the day's work truly began. "Morning," she called, hanging her coat on the peg by the door. Finn turned from where he had been measuring out feed, and there was something in his expression that made her pause. "Morning," he returned. "Can I talk to you for a minute, before we start the day?" "Of course," Miranda said, her heart suddenly hammering. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing wrong," Finn assured her quickly. He set down the bucket he had been holding and faced her fully. "I just need to say something, and I need to say it before I lose my nerve." Miranda waited, hardly daring to breathe. "These past few months, having you here, working with you every day, it has been the best time I can remember," Finn began, the words coming out slightly rushed, as if he had practiced them but was nervous anyway. "You are smart and capable, and you have this way with the horses that just amazes me. But more than that, you make me laugh. You make me look forward to each day in a way I have not in years." He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I know you have been through a terrible loss, and I know the circumstances that brought you here were tragic. The last thing I want is to take advantage of that or make you feel obligated in any way. But I cannot keep pretending that I only see you as an employee, because that would be a lie." Miranda's heart was racing now, hope and fear tangling in her chest. "What I am trying to say, and doing a terrible job of it, is that I have feelings for you, Miranda. Strong feelings. And if there is any chance that you might feel the same way, I would very much like to court you properly. With your permission, of course." The relief that flooded through Miranda was so intense it made her knees weak. "Yes," she said, the word coming out more forcefully than she had intended. Yes, I feel the same way. I have for weeks now, but I did not know how to tell you. Did not know if it was appropriate or if you could ever see me as anything other than the broken girl who wandered into your corral. Finn closed the distance between them in 2 strides, taking her hands in his. I have never seen you as broken, he said fiercely. Hurt, yes, grieving, absolutely, but never broken. You are one of the strongest people I have ever met. You barely know me, Miranda whispered, but she was smiling through the tears that had started to fall. I know enough, Finn said. I know you talk to horses like they are your dearest friends. I know you work harder than most men I have hired. I know you take your coffee with too much sugar and you sing when you think no one is listening. I know you are afraid of spiders, but you will pick up a snake without batting an eye. I know you are kind and honest and brave. Kiss me, Miranda said, surprising herself with her boldness. Finn needed no further invitation. He cupped her face in his work-roughened hands and lowered his mouth to hers in a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise. Miranda melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, and for a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them, to the warmth of his lips and the solid strength of his body and the rightness of being in his arms. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Finn rested his forehead against hers. I am going to do this properly, he vowed. I am going to court you the way you deserve, take you to church socials and town dances. Let everyone know my intentions are honorable. I would like that, Miranda said. Though I have to admit I quite liked what we just did too. Finn laughed, the sound full of joy and relief. Well, there will be more of that too, I promise, but first we have horses to tend to. They did manage to get to work, though they both moved through their tasks with lighter hearts and frequent shared glances. Captain seemed particularly smug about the whole thing, as if he had known all along how things would turn out. True to his word, Finn courted Miranda properly. He escorted her to church on Sundays, sitting beside her in the pew and introducing her to more of the townspeople. He took her to the town dance in late November, where he proved to be a surprisingly good dancer, despite claiming he had 2 left feet. You lied about your dancing ability, Miranda accused as he spun her around the floor. I may have downplayed it a bit, Finn admitted with a grin. My mother insisted I learn, said any man worth his salt should know how to dance with a lady. They courted through December, as winter settled over Moab and the stable work became more challenging with frozen water buckets and skittish horses spooked by snow. Miranda proved her worth again and again, never complaining about the cold or the early mornings or the hard work. On Christmas Eve, after they had finished the evening feeding and were preparing to close up the stable for the night, Finn pulled Miranda into the office and presented her with a small wrapped package. You did not have to get me anything, Miranda protested, though she was clearly pleased. Open it, Finn urged. Inside was a pair of leather riding gloves, buttery soft and perfectly sized for her hands. Finn, these are beautiful, she breathed. They must have cost a fortune. You need good gloves for riding, he said simply. Those cotton ones you have been using are not warm enough for winter. Besides, I wanted to get you something nice. Miranda threw her arms around his neck, kissing him soundly. Thank you, she said against his lips. I love them. I have something else too, Finn said when they finally pulled apart. He looked nervous again, the way he had that morning when he had confessed his feelings. It is not wrapped, but it is important. He led her out to the corral where Captain was waiting as if on cue. The palomino came to the fence immediately, and Finn stroked his neck. I have been thinking a lot about the future lately, Finn began. About what I want, where I see myself in 5 years, 10 years, and in every version of that future I imagine you are there. Miranda's breath caught. I know we have not been courting long, Finn continued. And if you want more time, I understand. But I am 30 years old, Miranda, and I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. I love your kindness and your strength, and the way you talk to my horses like they are your best friends. I love how you make me laugh and how you are not afraid of hard work, and how you look at me like I am something special. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, Miranda saw a simple gold band with a small diamond that caught the moonlight. Miranda Vale, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Miranda could barely see him through her tears, but she nodded vigorously. Yes, she managed. Yes, of course, yes. Finn slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and Captain was whinnying as if in approval of the whole proceeding. They were married in February of 1883, in a simple ceremony at the church with most of the town in attendance. Mrs. Henderson cried through the whole thing, proud of her role in maintaining the young couple's propriety during their courtship. The banker gave Miranda away, since she had no family of her own, and several of Finn's customers stood up as witnesses. Miranda wore a dress of pale blue that the seamstress in town had made for her, and she carried wildflowers that Finn had somehow found despite it being winter. When Reverend Matthews pronounced them man and wife, Finn kissed her with such tenderness that Miranda thought her heart might burst from happiness. They held the reception at the stable, which they had decorated with ribbons and lanterns. Someone had brought a fiddle, and there was dancing and laughter and food contributed by various townspeople. Miranda danced with her new husband, with the sheriff, with the banker, with anyone who asked, her face glowing with joy. Late in the evening, after most of the guests had gone home, Miranda slipped out to the corral to see Captain. The horse came to her immediately, and she stroked his neck. "Thank you," she told him softly. "If I had not stopped to talk to you that day, none of this would have happened. You brought us together, you beautiful boy." "Still talking to my horse like a friend, I see," Finn said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Our horse," Miranda corrected, leaning back against him. "We are married now, which means what is yours is mine and what is mine is yours." "I like the sound of that, Mrs. Porter," Finn murmured against her hair. They stood there for a long moment, watching the stars come out over the red rocks, listening to the horses settle for the night. Miranda thought about the journey that had brought her here, about the tragedy that could have destroyed her but instead had led her to this man, this life, this unexpected happiness. "What are you thinking about?" Finn asked. "About how sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best," Miranda said. "About how grateful I am that I stumbled into this corral that day, about how much I love you." "I love you too," Finn said, turning her to face him. "And I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret saying yes to me." "I could never regret it," Miranda assured him, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, Finn Porter." They moved into the small house Finn had been renting at the edge of town, though they still spent most of their waking hours at the stable. Miranda continued to work alongside Finn, their partnership in business now matched by their partnership in life. The stable thrived under their joint management. Word spread about the young woman who could gentle the most nervous horse, who could diagnose lameness with a glance, who treated every animal in her care like family. Customers came from farther afield to board their horses with Porter stables, knowing they would receive the best care possible. In the spring, Finn surprised Miranda by bringing home a young mare, dappled gray with intelligent eyes and a gentle disposition. "She is yours," he said, presenting the lead rope to Miranda. "Every good stable hand needs her own horse, and I thought you might like to pick her name." Miranda was speechless for a moment, running her hands over the mare's sleek coat. She is perfect, she finally managed. Absolutely perfect. What will you call her? Finn asked. Miranda thought for a moment, then smiled. Hope, she said. Her name is Hope. It was fitting, Finn thought. This woman who had arrived in Moab with nothing but grief and the clothes on her back had rebuilt her life into something beautiful. She embodied hope in every way that mattered. As spring turned to summer, they fell into comfortable rhythms as a married couple. Miranda would wake early, often before dawn, and slip out to the stable to start the morning feeding. Finn would join her shortly after, 2 cups of coffee in hand, and they would work side by side as the sun rose over the red cliffs. They would talk as they worked, about everything and nothing. Miranda told Hope and Captain and all the other horses about her day, about the book she was reading, about her dreams for the future. And Finn would listen with a smile, occasionally interjecting his own thoughts. You know they cannot actually understand you, right? He teased one morning as Miranda conducted an entire conversation with Hope about whether they should expand the stable. Of course they can, Miranda retorted. They may not speak our language, but they understand intent and emotion. Besides, talking to them helps me think things through. Fair enough, Finn conceded. But for the record, I think expanding is a good idea too. We have been turning away customers for the past month. They discussed it seriously over the following weeks, eventually deciding to add 4 more stalls and another corral. Finn did most of the construction work himself, with Miranda helping where she could and managing the existing stable operations on her own when needed. It was hard work, but Miranda had never been afraid of that. She relished the challenge, the sense of building something lasting with her husband. When they finally completed the expansion in late August, they celebrated with a picnic in the desert, just the 2 of them and the sunset painting the world in impossible colors. To us, Finn toasted with his canteen of water, and to Porter Stables. To second chances, Miranda added, clinking her canteen against his, and to horses who bring people together. In October, a year after Finn had proposed, Miranda realized she had missed her monthly cycle. The doctor confirmed what she had suspected. She was pregnant, due in late spring. Finn's reaction when she told him was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy, before carefully setting her down and checking that he had not been too rough. I am pregnant, not made of glass, Miranda assured him, though she was touched by his concern. I know, but I want to be careful, Finn said, his hand moving to rest on her still flat belly. This is our child, Miranda, our baby. It is, she agreed, covering his hand with hers. Are you happy? Happy does not even begin to cover it, Finn said. I am terrified and excited and grateful all at once. They told Mrs. Henderson first, who cried and immediately began planning baby gifts. The news spread through Moab quickly, as news always did in small towns, and they received congratulations from all quarters. The church ladies organized a quilting bee, determined to make the finest baby quilt the territory had ever seen. Miranda continued working at the stable through her pregnancy, though Finn became increasingly protective as she grew larger. By spring, she was relegated to the lighter tasks, managing the books and talking to the horses while Finn handled the heavy lifting. I feel useless, she complained one April morning watching Finn haul water buckets. You are growing our child, Finn reminded her. That is the opposite of useless. Tell that to Hope, Miranda said, stroking the mare's neck. She probably thinks I have abandoned her. As if in response, Hope nuzzled Miranda's swollen belly, and they all felt the baby kick. Finn rushed over, pressing his hand where Hope's nose had been, his face filled with wonder. Did you feel that? Miranda asked, though clearly he had. That is our baby, Finn said, his voice thick with emotion. Our son or daughter saying hello. Maybe both, Miranda suggested. It certainly feels like more than one person in there sometimes. She went into labor on a warm May evening, and Finn sent for the doctor while Mrs. Henderson stayed with Miranda, coaching her through the contractions with the experience of someone who had attended many births. Finn paced outside the bedroom door, listening to his wife's labored breathing and occasional cries of pain, feeling helpless and terrified. When the baby's first wail finally came, strong and healthy, he nearly collapsed with relief. The doctor emerged a few minutes later, smiling. "Congratulations, Mr. Porter. You have a son. Both mother and baby are doing well." Finn entered the room to find Miranda propped up against pillows, exhausted but radiant, cradling a small bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up as he approached, and her smile was incandescent. "Meet your son," she said softly. Finn sat carefully on the edge of the bed, peering at the tiny red face of his child. The baby had dark hair like his own and a surprisingly strong grip when Finn offered his finger. "He is perfect," Finn breathed. "You are perfect. I cannot believe he is really ours." "He needs a name," Miranda said. "I was thinking, if you agree, we could name him after your father. Not the whole name, but maybe his first name." Finn's father had been called Frederick, and despite his flaws, Finn had loved him. "Frederick James Porter," he said, trying it out. "James for your father," Miranda nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I think they would both be proud." Baby Frederick was a healthy, happy child who rarely cried and seemed fascinated by the world around him. Miranda would bring him to the stable in a sling, continuing to help with the lighter work while Finn handled the more strenuous tasks. The horses seemed to understand the need for quiet around the baby, and Captain, in particular, was remarkably gentle, allowing Frederick to pet his nose with tiny, uncoordinated hands. "He is going to be a natural horseman," Finn predicted one afternoon, watching his 6-month-old son laugh in delight as Hope nuzzled him. With these two as parents and an entire stable of horses as playmates, how could he be anything else? Miranda pointed out. As Frederick grew, so did the stable's reputation. They were now boarding horses from as far away as Grand Junction, and Finn had hired 2 additional stable hands to help manage the workload. Miranda oversaw the hiring, insisting on finding people who would treat the animals with the same care and respect she did. By the time Frederick was 2, he was toddling around the stable, chattering to the horses in his own language. Miranda and Finn would watch him with a mixture of amusement and wonder, seeing their own love of horses reflected in their son. "He talks to them just like you do," Finn observed one day, watching Frederick have what appeared to be a serious conversation with Captain. "And just like I talked to Captain that first day we met," Miranda said, leaning into her husband's embrace. "It feels like a lifetime ago, but it has only been 3 years. "Best 3 years of my life," Finn said, pressing a kiss to her temple. When Frederick was 3, Miranda discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first, with more sickness and fatigue, and she was forced to step back from the stable work earlier than she had liked. Finn hired another hand to pick up the slack and spent his evenings rubbing Miranda's swollen feet and bringing her ginger tea. "You take such good care of me," Miranda said one evening, relaxing into his ministrations. "You are carrying our child," Finn said simply. "It is the least I can do." Their daughter was born in March of 1887, smaller than Frederick had been but equally healthy. They named her Margaret Rose, after Miranda's mother and Finn's mother respectively, and she had her mother's eyes and a head full of blonde hair. Frederick was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to hold her and help with everything. Miranda and Finn supervised carefully, teaching him to be gentle, to support her head, to speak softly around her. She is so little, Frederick observed, peering at his sister with wide eyes. You were this little once too, Miranda told him. But you grew big and strong, and Margaret will too. With 2 children, life became more complicated but also richer. The house that had seemed adequate for 2 now felt cramped, and they began making plans to build something larger. Finn hired a carpenter, and they spent evenings sketching out designs, arguing good-naturedly about the number of bedrooms and the size of the kitchen. The new house went up over the summer, a sprawling structure with room for their growing family and any future additions. Miranda insisted on large windows that overlooked the stable, wanting to always be able to see the horses that had brought them together. They moved in that September, and Miranda stood in the middle of the empty parlor, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "What do you think?" Finn asked, holding Margaret while Frederick ran through the rooms exploring every corner. "I think it is perfect," Miranda said. "I think our whole life is perfect, even after everything," Finn asked quietly, "after how it started." Miranda moved to him, wrapping her arms around her husband and daughter both. "Especially after that," she said. "I would not change a single thing, Finn, because it all led me to you, to us, to this life we have built." The years continued to pass in a blur of work and family and love. Frederick started school, proving to be a bright student who nonetheless preferred the stable to the schoolroom. Margaret grew into a sweet-natured child who, like her brother, seemed more comfortable with horses than with people. When Frederick was 8 and Margaret was 5, Miranda found herself pregnant again, a surprise but a welcome one. This pregnancy resulted in twins, 2 boys they named Thomas and William, and suddenly their house felt small again despite being only a few years old. "We might need to add on," Finn joked, looking at the 4 children now running through their home. "Or we might need to stop," Miranda countered, though she was smiling. They did add on, another bedroom and a larger kitchen, and they did not have any more children, though not for lack of love between husband and wife. 4 children, the stable, and each other seemed to be exactly the right amount of life to fill their days. Captain lived to the remarkable age of 22, finally succumbing to old age in the summer of 1898. Frederick, now 16, helped his father bury the palomino in a spot overlooking the red rocks they all loved. Miranda stood with her other children, tears streaming down her face, mourning the horse that had witnessed her arrival in Moab, her first conversation with Finn, the beginning of everything that mattered. "He was a good horse," Finn said, his own voice thick with emotion. "The best I ever knew." "He brought us together," Miranda said. "I will never forget that." They marked the grave with a simple headstone, "Captain Morgan, beloved friend." It seemed inadequate for all the horse had meant to them, but it was the best they could do. Hope lived several more years, finally passing in 1903 at the age of 21. By then, the stable had expanded to 3 times its original size, and Frederick was working alongside his father full-time, having decided against going to college in favor of the family business. Margaret helped when she could, though her true passion lay in teaching, and she had taken a position at the local school. Thomas and William, now 13, were still deciding what they wanted to be when they grew up, though they too loved the horses and seemed likely to follow in their father's and brother's footsteps. On their 20th wedding anniversary in February of 1903, Finn took Miranda back to the spot where he had proposed, now a place they thought of as their own. They sat together as the sun set, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest. 20 years, Miranda mused. It has gone so fast. "Best 20 years of my life," Finn said, "though I think I said that at 3 years too." "You did," Miranda confirmed with a laugh, "but it is still true, is it not? Every year with you is better than the last, even the hard ones, Finn asked. When Thomas broke his arm falling out of the hay loft, when the stable caught fire and we almost lost everything, when Margaret had scarlet fever and we thought we might lose her, even those, Miranda said firmly, because we faced them together and we came through them together. That is what marriage is, Finn. Not just the good times, but the hard times too, and having someone beside you through it all. I love you, Miranda Porter, Finn said, tilting her face up to kiss her. Thank you for talking to my horse that day. Thank you for giving me a chance. Thank you for this life. I love you too, Miranda said, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. They sat until the stars came out, talking about their children, their grandchildren to be, their plans for the future. The stable was thriving, their family was healthy, and they had each other. What more could anyone ask for? As the years continued to pass, they watched their children grow into adults. Frederick married a girl from town and gave them 3 grandchildren who all inherited the family love of horses. Margaret married a teacher from Salt Lake City, but moved back to Moab after a few years, unable to stay away from the red rocks and wide skies of home. Thomas and William both became veterinarians, studying in Denver before returning to practice in Moab and the surrounding area. Miranda and Finn gradually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the stable, though they still spent every morning there, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise over the corrals. Finn's hair had gone gray, and Miranda moved a bit slower than she used to, but their love had only deepened with time. On a warm September morning in 1920, Miranda walked out to the stable as she had done for 38 years. Finn was already there, as he always was, feeding the horses that now numbered in the dozens. He looked up as she approached, and his smile was the same one he had given her that first day, full of warmth and welcome. "Morning, Mrs. Porter," he greeted her. "Morning, Mr. Porter," she returned, accepting the coffee cup he handed her. They stood together, watching the horses eat, listening to the familiar sounds of the stable waking up. A palomino gelding, great-grandson of the original captain, came to the fence, and Miranda automatically reached out to stroke his nose. "Hello there, handsome," she said softly. "Are you having a good morning?" "Still talking to horses like they are your friends," Finn observed, the same teasing note in his voice that had been there all those years ago. "Always," Miranda confirmed. "They have never let me down." "Neither have I hope," Finn said. Miranda turned to look at her husband, this man who had saved her in so many ways, who had given her a home and a family and a purpose. "Never," she said firmly. "Not once in 38 years. "Good," Finn said, pulling her close. "Because I plan on at least another 38, if you will have me." "Deal," Miranda said, rising on her toes to kiss him, just as in love with him at 60 as she had been at 21. They stood there in the morning sun, surrounded by horses, and Miranda thought about the journey that had brought her here. The tragedy that had seemed like the end of her world had instead been the beginning of something better than she ever could have imagined. She had lost her parents, but she had found Finn. She had lost her old life, but she had built a new one that was richer and fuller than the first, and it had all started with a conversation with a horse and a cowboy who had asked her to talk to him the same way. As if reading her thoughts, Finn said quietly, "I am glad you stumbled into my corral that day." "So am I," Miranda said. "So am I." They stayed at the stable until lunch, working side by side as they had for nearly 4 decades. Their comfortable silence interrupted only by Miranda's conversations with the horses and Finn's quiet responses. Their children and grandchildren stopped by throughout the day, a steady stream of Porters who had all inherited the family business and the family love of horses. As the sun set that evening, painting the red rocks in shades of gold and crimson, Miranda and Finn sat on the porch of the house they had built together, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. Their life had been good, full of love and laughter and hard work and horses. They had raised 4 children who had become good, kind adults. They had built a business that would continue for generations. Most importantly, they had loved each other through it all, through the good times and the bad, through the joys and the sorrows. "Happy?" Finn asked, reaching for her hand. "Incredibly," Miranda answered, lacing her fingers through his. "You? More than I ever thought possible," Finn said. They sat there as the stars came out, and somewhere in the distance, a horse whinnied, the sound carrying on the evening breeze. Miranda smiled, thinking of Captain, of hope, of all the horses that had filled their lives with purpose and joy. She had come to Moab with nothing, broken and grieving, and found everything she never knew she needed. A home, a family, a purpose, and a love that had lasted a lifetime. All because she had stopped to talk to a horse, and a cowboy had asked her to talk to him that way too. It was, she thought as Finn squeezed her hand gently, the best decision she had ever made. And as they sat together in the gathering darkness, surrounded by the life they had built, Miranda knew that their story was one worth telling, a testament to the healing power of love, hard work, and horses who listened. The end came for them as it comes for all people, but not for many years yet. They lived to see great-grandchildren, to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, to watch the stable grow into one of the largest and most respected in the territory. And when they finally did pass, within months of each other as couples married for so long often do, they were buried on the hill overlooking the stable, next to Captain and Hope and all the other horses that had filled their lives. Their children and grandchildren continued the business, passing it down through the generations, and the name Porter Stables became synonymous with quality and care. And though the years passed and memories faded, the story of how it all began was never forgotten. A young woman talking to a horse, and a cowboy who fell in love with her gentle way. It was a story told to children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren and beyond. A reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the best, and that love can be found in the most unexpected places. All you have to do is be brave enough to talk to a horse, and wise enough to say yes when a good man asks you to talk to him that way too.